My son ditched Christmas with me to be with his sick Amael. Then I spotted their vacation in Bali. My reaction left him stunned. The glossy brochure had been sitting on my kitchen counter for months, dog-eared and well-studied. Royal Caribbean's Christmas magic in the Mediterranean. Every time I walked past it, I'd stop and trail my fingers over the images: sparkling azure waters, elegant dining rooms decked in holiday finery, and families laughing together against the backdrop of sunset-dappled waves. This wasn't just any Christmas gift. This was redemption. You see, I'd missed so many moments with David growing up. The demands of building my business had stolen countless bedtime stories, baseball games, and school plays. But now, at 62, with retirement finally giving me the time I'd always promised would come someday, I was determined to make up for lost time. And not just with David, but with Monica and my grandchildren too. 7-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack. "Mom, this is way too much," David had protested when I first floated the idea back in July. We were sitting in their modest suburban backyard, watching the kids splash in a plastic kiddie pool, while Monica tended to her tomato plants. "Nonsense," I'd replied, waving away his concern with the same decisive hand gesture I'd used in countless boardrooms. "I've been saving for something special. And what's more special than making memories together? Besides, it's been a tough year for you two." That was an understatement. David had been passed over for a promotion he'd worked 3 years to earn, and Monica's photography business had struggled after her main corporate client went bankrupt. They'd had to cancel their summer vacation, scaling back to weekend trips to the local lake instead of the 2 weeks in Colorado they'd planned. I'd seen the strain in the new lines around David's eyes, and the way Monica's smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. "Think about it," I continued, softening my voice as I watched Lily dump a plastic bucket of water over Jack's head, their squeals of laughter floating through the humid summer air. 10 days with no cooking, no cleaning, just being together. The kids will have activities. You and Monica can have some alone time. And I'll get my Christmas wish, all my favorite people in one place. I didn't add the part about how empty my house felt during the holidays, how I'd spent the last 3 Christmases watching old movies alone after a perfunctory 2-hour visit from them on Christmas Eve. Some things were better left unsaid. By August, they'd accepted. By September, I'd paid for the premium package, connecting suites with balconies, all excursions included, even a private Christmas Eve dinner in the ship's most exclusive restaurant. The total made even my financial advisor wince, but I didn't care. The look on David's face when I presented them with the official booking confirmation over Sunday dinner was worth every penny. "Mom, this is..." He trailed off, emotion making his voice thick. Monica had actually cried, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Thank you, Eleanor," she'd whispered. "The kids are going to lose their minds." And they had. When we told them in October, Lily had danced around the living room, singing, "We're going on a big boat, we're going on a big boat," while Jack, not entirely understanding but caught up in his sister's excitement, jumped up and down chanting, "Boat, boat." I'd gone all in after that. New luggage for everyone. Swimming lessons for Jack, who was still a bit wary of water deeper than his bathtub. I even bought myself new clothes. Colorful resort wear that was a far cry from my usual palette of business neutrals. I researched shore excursions meticulously, booking a private guide in Barcelona who specialized in child-friendly tours and reserving spots for a traditional Christmas market visit in Marseille. Every detail was planned to perfection, every moment designed to create the memories that would sustain me through whatever years I had left. Because that's what this was really about, wasn't it? Not just making up for lost time, but creating something that would outlast me. Stories they would tell long after I was gone. "Remember that Christmas cruise with Grandma? Remember how..." The call came 5 days before we were set to depart. I was wrapping the final presents to put in their stockings. Yes, I'd bought stockings to hang in our cruise cabins, perhaps excessive, but that's a grandmother's prerogative, when my phone lit up with David's face. "Hey there, cruise director," I answered cheerfully, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I struggled with a particularly stubborn piece of tape. "I was just wrapping the last of the kids' gifts. I found this amazing build-your-own telescope kit for Lily that the onboard astronomer can help her with. And for Jack..." "Mom," David interrupted, his voice unusually somber. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made me put down the scissors. What's wrong? Is everyone okay? Yes, everyone's fine, but he sighed heavily. There's been a change of plans. Monica's mom isn't doing well. Martha? What happened? I asked, genuinely concerned. Though Martha and I had always maintained a polite rivalry for our children's attention, I'd never wish ill on her. It came on suddenly, David said. Some kind of infection that's gotten worse. The doctors aren't sure yet exactly what's going on, but she's got a high fever and they're running tests. Monica's really worried. Oh no, I murmured, already seeing where this was headed but hoping desperately I was wrong. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do? Should I call her? No, she's pretty overwhelmed right now, David continued, his words coming faster now, as if he wanted to get through this part quickly. The thing is, Mom, we can't go on the cruise. Monica needs to be with her mother, especially during Christmas. You know how close they are. I did know. Martha and Monica spoke daily, sometimes multiple times. Martha had been a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs to put Monica through college. They shared a bond I'd always secretly envied, especially given the more complicated relationship I had with my own son. Of course, I said automatically. Though inside I felt something crumbling. Family comes first. We can always reschedule. I know how much you were looking forward to this, David said, relief evident in his voice now that the worst part was over. And we were too, believe me. The kids are going to be so disappointed. Tell them Grandma understands completely, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. Martha needs her family around her right now. Just keep me posted on how she's doing, okay? We will. And Mom, thank you for understanding. I know this isn't what any of us planned. After we hung up, I sat motionless among the half-wrapped presents and festive paper, feeling the silence of my house press in around me. Through the window, I could see my neighbor's elaborate Christmas light display, blinking merrily against the early evening darkness. Somewhere down the street, carolers were singing, "It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas." I gathered the gifts into a neat pile, methodically put away the wrapping supplies, and then did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I poured a generous glass of brandy, curled up in my favorite armchair, and let myself cry for the ruined plans, for the empty days ahead, and mostly for the painful realization that despite all my efforts, I was still on the periphery of my son's life, not at its center. The next morning, I called the cruise line. Not to cancel, not yet, but to see if anything could be salvaged from this situation. Perhaps I could take just the grandchildren. Or maybe reschedule for spring break. The customer service representative was sympathetic but firm about their cancellation policies. I'd have 72 hours to make a final decision before penalties kicked in. I understand, I told her. Though what I really understood in that moment was that sometimes, no matter how carefully you plan or how much you spend, life has other ideas. I'll be in touch. I hung up and looked at the brochure still lying on my counter, those happy families mocking me now. Outside, fat snowflakes had begun to fall, promising the white Christmas I'd planned to escape. Christmas morning arrived with an oppressive silence. I'd always loved the quiet hours of dawn on December 25th, the peaceful moments before the house would erupt with the patter of grandchildren's feet and the cheerful chaos of torn wrapping paper. But this year, that silence meant something entirely different. It meant absence, emptiness. I forced myself through the motions. I made coffee in my favorite holiday mug, a garish thing with a reindeer whose nose lit up when filled with hot liquid. A gift from Jack last year. He'd been so proud when I'd opened it, his little face beaming as he'd exclaimed, "It's magic, Grandma." The memory stung. By now, we should have been waking up in our luxurious staterooms, the gentle rocking of the Mediterranean beneath us, the promise of Christmas breakfasts served on white linen tablecloths, stretching before us. Instead, I was alone in my bathrobe, the only sounds the hum of the furnace and the occasional scrape of snowplow blades against the street outside. "Merry Christmas to me," I muttered, settling onto the couch with my steaming mug. I hadn't bothered with a tree this year. What was the point? But I had hung the stockings on the mantel out of habit. 5 of them, mine, David's, Monica's, Lily's, and little Jack's. I'd stuffed mine with a few token gifts to myself, determined to maintain at least some semblance of holiday spirit. My phone chimed with several incoming text messages. friends and distant relatives sending the obligatory holiday wishes. I scrolled through them, responding with equally generic Merry Christmas to you too messages, adding exclamation points I didn't feel. Then came a text from my sister in Arizona. Hope you and the family are enjoying that fancy cruise. Send pics. I hadn't told anyone about the cancellation. Pride perhaps, or the lingering hope that maybe it had all been a mistake and they'd show up on my doorstep, bags packed and ready to go. Ridiculous. I knew. Change of plans, I typed back. They're with Monica's mother. She's ill. Oh no, came the immediate response. Serious? Apparently, I replied, not elaborating further. I switched over to Facebook, scrolling mindlessly through an endless stream of perfect family Christmas photos. Everyone seemed to be having the picture-perfect holiday I'd planned for months. After a few minutes of this self-torture, I switched to Instagram, which I rarely used but had installed to keep up with Monica's photography business and glimpses of the grandkids. That's when I saw it. Monica had posted a story just 20 minutes earlier. My finger hovered over her profile picture, ringed in the colorful circle that indicated new content. I tapped it, expecting perhaps a photo of Martha in her sickbed. Everyone gathered around with concerned faces. Instead, a video filled my screen, 2 flutes of champagne clinking together, bubbles dancing in elegant glasses. The background was unmistakable, a sweeping vista of turquoise ocean, golden sand, and swaying palm trees. The boomerang clip played again and again, those glasses clinking in an endless toast to what? To successfully lying to your mother-in-law? My hand trembled slightly as I continued watching her story. The next slide was a photo of Lily and Jack, their faces smeared with chocolate ice cream, sitting at what appeared to be an outdoor restaurant. Their skin was already sun-kissed, their smiles wide and carefree, no sign of concern about their ailing grandmother. And then came the final damning evidence. A geotag. Nusa Dua Beach, Bali, Indonesia. The phone slipped from my fingers and fell onto the couch cushion. I sat frozen, the cheerful little reindeers on my mug still glowing red as the coffee cooled untouched. Bali? They were in Bali. There was no sick mother-in-law, no family emergency, just a better offer, a more appealing holiday. And they had lied, looked me straight in the eye, or at least through the phone, and lied rather than simply telling me the truth. Had they laughed about it, had they discussed how easy it would be to fool old mom? She'll understand, they probably said to each other. She'll be fine on her own. The initial shock gave way to a wave of anger so intense it left me breathless. I grabbed my phone again, fingers flying across the screen as I navigated to David's number. I would call him right now, and what? Scream? Cry? Demand an explanation? I put the phone down again, my finger hovering over his contact information. Something shifted inside me then, a strange calm replacing the fury. This wasn't just about a ruined Christmas, or a wasted expense. This was about respect, about honesty, about what I was willing to accept from the people I loved most in the world. I picked up the phone again, but this time I didn't call David. Instead, I called the cruise line. Hello, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Reference number 472 sign B. I need to make a change to my booking. Yes, I'd like to cancel the entire booking, I said to the cruise representative, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. That's 4 premium suite packages for the Mediterranean Christmas sailing, the woman confirmed, her voice professionally sympathetic. May I ask the reason for cancellation, Ms. Bennett? This is quite last minute, and while your travel insurance covers most circumstances, there may be family emergency, I cut in, almost laughing at the irony. Isn't that always the way? I answered her remaining questions mechanically, confirming my understanding of the refund policy and listening as she explained the timeline for the money to be returned to my account. When she asked if I'd like to rebook for another date, I declined. No thank you, I think we've moved beyond cruises. After hanging up, I sat in the heavy silence of my living room, watching the snow drift lazily past my window. The initial surge of anger had receded, leaving behind something far more potent: clarity. For years I'd been trying to buy my way back into David's life, to compensate for my absences during his childhood with extravagant gifts and grand gestures. And what had it gotten me? a son who would rather lie than spend Christmas with me. I thought about calling him out, sending a screenshot of Monica's Instagram story with a cutting remark. But what would that accomplish? Another apology? Excuses? A strained relationship that would make future holidays even more awkward. No, this required something different. Something that would speak louder than any confrontation. My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a wild moment, I wondered if David had somehow realized his mistake and flown home to make amends. But when I opened the door, it was Maria, my housekeeper, standing on the porch with a small foil-covered dish in her hands. "Merry Christmas, Miss Bennet," she said, her warm smile creating tiny crinkles around her eyes. "I know you said not to come today, but I thought you might like some of my tamales. It's tradition in my family." Maria Hernandez had worked for me for 8 years, coming twice a week to clean my 2-big house. She was in her late 30s, a single mother with 2 boys, Eduardo, 14, and Carlos, 10. She wasn't just an employee, she was one of the few constants in my life. She had never missed a day, never complained, and had always politely refused any extra gifts or bonuses I tried to give her, beyond her salary. "That's so kind, Maria. Please, come in out of the cold," I said, gesturing her inside. "Oh, I can't stay," she said, handing me the dish. "The boys are waiting at home. We're going to watch Christmas movies all day. It's our tradition." Her smile faltered slightly. "I thought you would be gone on your cruise by now." "There was a change of plans," I said simply, not willing to burden her with my family drama. Maria nodded, understanding in her eyes. She had met David and his family on a few occasions when they'd visited. She never said anything, but I sometimes wondered if she saw the dynamics I tried so hard to ignore. "Well, enjoy the tamales. They're my mother's recipe." As she turned to leave, something clicked into place in my mind. "Maria, wait," I called after her. "I have a question for you." She turned, eyebrows raised expectantly. "Do you and your boys have passports?" Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Eduardo does, for a school trip to Canada last year. Carlos and I don't. Why do you ask?" I felt a smile spread across my face, the first genuine one in days. "How quickly do you think you could get them?" I don't know. A week? Maybe 2? She looked bewildered. "Miss Bennet, what is this about?" I stepped closer, suddenly energized. "Maria, how would you and your boys like to go on a cruise? All expenses paid. 10 days in the Mediterranean. You'd have to leave in 3 days." Her eyes widened and she shook her head slightly as if to clear it. "Miss Bennet, I don't understand." "I'm serious," I said, the plan crystallizing in my mind with each passing second. "The cruise I booked for my family, well, they're not using it. It seems a shame to let it go to waste. You've worked so hard for so long. You deserve a break, a real vacation with your boys." But the cost," she stammered. "It must be thousands of dollars." "Already paid for," I replied with a dismissive wave. "Non-refundable, actually. If you don't use it, no one does." That wasn't entirely true. I just arranged for a refund. But I could easily rebook it, and somehow, spending the money on Maria felt infinitely more satisfying than getting it back. I couldn't possibly accept such a gift. Maria protested, but I could see a glimmer of wonder in her eyes. "Then don't think of it as a gift," I said. "Think of it as a Christmas miracle." "One question, Maria. Can you and your boys get passports in a week?" Her hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes as the reality of my offer sank in. And in that moment, watching hope bloom across her face, I felt something unexpected: joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of activity. I'd forgotten how exhilarating it could be to pull off something truly meaningful on a tight deadline. It reminded me of my early days building my business, the rush of making the impossible happen through sheer determination. The passport expediting service cost a small fortune, but my personal connection at the State Department, an old college friend who owed me a favor, made miracles happen. Maria and Carlos had their passports in hand within 48 hours. When I called Maria to confirm that everything was set, I could hear the disbelief still lingering in her voice. "Miss Bennet, are you absolutely certain about this?" It's too much." "It's Eleanor, please," I corrected her gently. And yes, I'm certain. Now do the boys have proper clothes for the cruise? There are formal nights, you know. Her hesitation told me everything. We will manage, she said finally, pride evident in her tone. Nonsense, I replied. Meet me at Macy's in an hour. We're going shopping. I'll never forget the look on Carlos's face when he tried on his first suit, a navy blue ensemble that made him look so grown up his mother's eyes welled with tears. Eduardo, trying hard to maintain teenage cool, couldn't suppress his grin when he saw himself in the mirror, transformed from a boy in hand-me-downs to a young man in tailored clothing. I look like one of those guys in the movies, he whispered, adjusting his tie with careful fingers. Better, I told him. You look like yourself. We didn't stop at formal wear. Summer clothes, swimsuits, proper luggage, cameras to document their journey. I wanted them to have everything they needed. When Maria protested again at the checkout counter, I simply said, consider it 8 years of Christmas bonuses you never let me give you. The night before their departure, I invited them over for dinner. I'd arranged for a car service to pick them up at 5 a.m. the next morning to take them to the airport, and I wanted to go over last-minute details. But really, I just wanted to see their excitement. My dining room table, usually set with precision and formality when I entertained business associates, now held a feast of everyone's favorites. Pizza for the boys. Eduardo loved pepperoni, Carlos was strictly cheese only, a salad for Maria, and my famous apple pie for dessert. A toast, I said, raising my glass of sparkling cider. Maria didn't drink alcohol. To new adventures. To Miss Eleanor, Carlos added shyly, raising his glass of chocolate milk. The best Santa ever. After dinner, I gave them each a final gift. A set of journals, to write down everything you see, I explained. The world is about to open up for you. Don't miss a moment. When they left that night, Maria hugged me fiercely. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Send postcards, I replied simply. That's all I ask. The next morning, I drove to the airport, determined to see them off properly. I found them at the check-in counter, Maria clutching their documents with the intensity of someone handling priceless artifacts. The boys were practically vibrating with excitement, Carlos bouncing on his toes, Eduardo trying and failing to look nonchalant. You came, Maria said when she spotted me, surprise evident in her voice. Of course, I replied. I couldn't miss the big send-off. I walked them as far as security would allow. As they prepared to enter the TSA line, a thought struck me. Wait, I said, pulling out my phone. Let me get a picture. They posed together, the three of them forming a tight unit, their new matching luggage beside them, their faces alight with anticipation. I snapped several photos, knowing I wanted to remember this moment exactly as it was, pure joy untainted by obligation or pretense. Send me photos, I reminded them, of everything. The ship, the food, the places you visit. I want to see it all through your eyes. We will, Miss Eleanor, I promise, Eduardo said. Suddenly serious. Thank you. No one's ever... just thank you. The final boarding call came over the loudspeaker, and I gave them each one last hug. Go, I said. Your adventure is waiting. I stood watching until they disappeared through security, occasional glimpses of them visible through the crowd. Maria's dark hair, Carlos turning back to wave one more time, Eduardo's tall frame guiding his family forward. And then they were gone, carried away toward an experience that would change their lives forever. As I walked back to my car, alone but somehow not lonely, I realized I was smiling. It was, strangely enough, the best Christmas morning I'd had in years. Not because of what I'd received, but because of what I'd given. Not just a trip, but a message. You matter. Your joy matters. Your dreams matter. I looked at the photo I'd taken, the three of them beaming at me from my phone screen, felt a contentment that no family obligation could ever have provided. Sometimes, the family we choose brings us more happiness than the family we're born into. The postcards started arriving 3 days after Maria and her boys departed. The first one showed the majestic cruise ship against a backdrop of azure Mediterranean waters, with Carlos's childish scrawl on the back. The boat is bigger than our apartment. Each exclamation point was underlined 3 times. I displayed it prominently on my refrigerator, smiling every time I passed by. The next day brought another, this one from Eduardo, showing the elegant dining room where they'd had their first formal dinner. "I ate something called escargot," he wrote. "It was snails, gross but also kind of good." Maria's postcards were more measured, but no less joyful. "Eleanor, I have no words. The boys are experiencing things I never thought possible." Carlos cried when he saw the ocean from our balcony. "You have given us the world." Each new arrival went straight to the refrigerator, creating a colorful mosaic of their journey. Barcelona, Marseille, Florence, Rome. Each image, a window into their adventure. Each message, a gift that warmed my heart in a way no obligatory family visit ever had. I was arranging the newest edition, a stunning view of Santorini's whitewashed buildings against the blue sea, when my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. It had been 8 days since Christmas, 8 days of peaceful silence from my son. No calls checking in, no texts asking how I'd spent the holiday. Nothing until now. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but decided against it. "Hello, David," I answered, my voice neutral. "Mom." His tone was sharp, agitated. "Did you cancel the cruise?" Not "how are you?" Not "merry belated Christmas." Straight to the point. "Yes," I replied simply, tracing my finger along the edge of Maria's latest postcard. "I did." "What the hell, Mom?" The frustration in his voice was palpable. "We had an agreement, did we?" I asked, surprised by my own calmness. "I thought we had a cruise planned for Christmas. But then your mother-in-law got sick, and you had to cancel. Remember?" There was a beat of silence before he responded, his voice slightly deflated. "Look, about that, Monica's mom wasn't actually that sick." "Really?" I infused the word with as much sarcasm as I could muster. "I never would have guessed from the Instagram posts of Bali." Another pause, longer this time. "You saw those?" "I did. It was a last-minute wellness retreat," he explained hastily. "Dr. Miller suggested it for her anxiety. It just happened to coincide with Christmas, and she really wanted us all there. I knew you'd be disappointed if I told you the truth." "So you lied instead," I stated flatly. "Because that would disappoint me less." "Mom, why not just say you had other plans?" I continued, cutting him off. "Why the elaborate story about illness? Did you think I was so fragile I couldn't handle the truth? Or was it just easier to lie?" "It wasn't like that," David protested. "We just didn't want to hurt your feelings. And now you've canceled the cruise out of spite? Do you know how much the kids were looking forward to it?" The audacity of his accusation momentarily stole my breath. "The cruise you all skipped to go to Bali? That cruise? The one you were so excited about that you couldn't even be bothered to tell me the truth?" "We were going to take it after the new year," he said, his voice taking on the placating tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. "Monica's mom paid for Bali. It was a gift. We didn't want to seem ungrateful, and we didn't want to miss your cruise either." "How thoughtful of you to consider everyone's feelings except mine," I replied. "But as it happens, I didn't cancel the cruise out of spite." "Then why?" I moved to the kitchen window, looking out at the snow-covered yard, "because I found someone who actually wanted to go." "What are you talking about?" Confusion had replaced anger in his voice. Without answering, I took my phone from my ear and snapped a photo of my refrigerator with its collage of postcards. I sent it to him, then waited. "What is this?" he asked after a moment. "That's Maria and her sons," I explained. "They're enjoying the cruise right now. In fact, I just got a postcard from Santorini this morning." "Maria? Your housekeeper? You gave our cruise to your housekeeper?" "I gave it to someone who appreciated it," I corrected him. "Someone who didn't lie to me." The silence that followed was weighted, uncomfortable. When David finally spoke, his voice was subdued. "Mom, I'm sorry. We should have been honest with you." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. But to give away a cruise that was meant for your family, to strangers—" "Maria isn't a stranger," I said firmly. "She's been in my life twice a week for 8 years. She's never lied to me, never treated me like an obligation or an afterthought. And seeing her boys experience things they never thought possible has brought me more joy than forcing my presence on people who'd rather be somewhere else." "That's not fair," David protested weakly. "No," I agreed. "It wasn't fair, but it was honest. And sometimes, David, the people who show up for you deserve more than the ones who don't." 3 months have passed since that phone call with David. Winter has melted into spring, and the daffodils I planted last fall are pushing through the soil in my front yard, stubborn and determined. A bit like me, I suppose. David hasn't called much since our confrontation. A few perfunctory texts, a stiff birthday call that lasted exactly 7 minutes. The comfortable fiction we'd maintained for years that we were close, that all was well, has been stripped away, leaving something raw and undefined in its place. I wish I could say I'm devastated, but the truth is more complicated. There's a certain relief in no longer pretending, in no longer bending myself into impossible shapes to accommodate his life while he offers me only scraps of his time and attention. I've stopped making excuses for him, stopped telling myself that next time will be different. Monica hasn't contacted me at all. Her Instagram is now set to private. But here's the unexpected twist in this story. I'm not alone. Lily calls me. My 11-year-old granddaughter figured out how to use FaceTime without her parents' help or permission. The first time her face appeared on my screen, gap-toothed smile and messy hair, I nearly dropped the phone in surprise. "Grandma," she'd exclaimed, "I lost another tooth." "See?" She'd opened her mouth wide, pointing at the empty space. "I see it, sweetheart," I'd replied, throat tight with emotion. "Did the tooth fairy come?" "Yep. $5 whole. Dad says it's inflation." We laugh together now, at least once a week. She shows me her art projects, asks about my garden, wants to know if I've read the book she's reading for school. Sometimes Jack joins, his little face appearing beside hers, babbling about dinosaurs or the latest superhero movie. They never mention the cruise or Bali or the tension between their parents and me. Children have a remarkable ability to cut through adult complications and find their way to what matters. Then there's Maria and her boys. Something shifted in our relationship after the cruise. Not because I bought their affection. That's not what happened at all. But because for the first time, I stopped seeing Maria as the help and started seeing her as a person with dreams and hopes and a fierce love for her children. They come for dinner every Sunday now. Eduardo helps me with my computer issues. Carlos and I have started a vegetable garden in my backyard. Maria teaches me to cook dishes from her childhood in Mexico. We talk and laugh and share stories around my dining room table, the same table that used to feel so empty and formal. The postcards are still on my refrigerator, but they've been joined by other mementos: a shell Carlos found on a Spanish beach, a small watercolor Eduardo painted of the sunset over the Mediterranean, a family photo of the three of them in front of the Colosseum, beaming with joy. Last week, Maria surprised me with a photo album she'd created of their cruise. "So you can see everything," she'd said, sliding it across the table with shy pride. I spent hours poring over those images, the wonder on the boys' faces, the places they'd explored, the experiences they'd never forget. On the last page was a note from all three of them. "Thank you for giving us the world. You will always be family to us." Family. The word I'd chased so desperately with David, trying to buy it with expensive gifts and overlooked slights. And here it was, given freely by people who owed me nothing. I didn't plan on teaching anyone a lesson when I gave that cruise away. I wasn't trying to punish David or prove a point. I just wanted to feel less forgotten, less like an obligation to be managed. What I discovered was that joy multiplies when shared with grateful hearts. That family isn't always defined by blood. That sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. David may come around eventually, or he may not. I've stopped pinning my happiness on that outcome. Instead, I focus on the relationships that nourish me, on the people who choose to be in my life, rather than those who feel obligated to include me in theirs. Yesterday, Eduardo announced he wants to apply to college next year, the first in his family to do so. "Will you help me with the applications, Miss Eleanor?" he asked, a mixture of determination and vulnerability in his young face. "I'd be honored," I told him, meaning every word. As I helped him research schools later that afternoon, I thought about how differently this year might have unfolded if David hadn't lied, if I hadn't seen that Instagram post, if I hadn't made that impulsive decision to give the cruise to Maria. The parallel life, the Christmas at sea with my biological family, the forced smiles and polite conversation, the underlying current of resentment, seemed pale and insubstantial compared to the rich tapestry of genuine connection I'd found instead. Sometimes the family we choose is the family that saves us. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of what we thought we needed and embracing what the universe has actually provided. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons are the ones we never intended to teach.